I never thought I'd be the kind of woman who falls for a man in cowboy boots, but life has a twisted sense of humor, doesn't it? My name is Rebecca, and this is the story of how my perfectly curated marriage crumbled the day my husband decided to throw away everything we built for a fantasy life on a ranch in Montana. If you're going through something similar, or if you just love a good drama, please hit that subscribe button because you're going to want to hear how this ends. For 15 years, I was married to Marcus Chen, a brilliant executive at one of the top investment firms in Manhattan. Our life was the definition of success: penthouse apartment overlooking Central Park, vacations in the Maldives, charity galas where we smiled for cameras while sipping $1,000 champagne. Marcus worked 16-hour days, and honestly, I got used to it. I built my own world, my interior design business, my friends, my yoga classes in Soho. We were two people living parallel lives under the same expensive roof, and I told myself that was just what marriage looked like after a decade and a half. Then came his 45th birthday. I planned this elaborate surprise party, invited everyone from his firm, had it catered by his favorite restaurant. But Marcus never showed up. I stood there in our living room, surrounded by confused guests, calling his phone over and over until finally, at midnight, he walked through the door. He wasn't drunk. He wasn't with another woman. He was just different. There was this look in his eyes I'd never seen before, something wild and desperate and terrifyingly alive. That night, after everyone left and I was furious and humiliated, Marcus sat me down and said the words that would shatter everything: "Rebecca, I can't do this anymore. I'm suffocating. I'm dying inside this life, and I need to leave before there's nothing left of me to save." I laughed at first because what else do you do when your husband sounds like he's having a midlife crisis straight out of a bad movie? But he wasn't joking. He told me he'd been feeling this way for years, that every morning he woke up and our bed felt like being buried alive, that the success we'd chased had cost him his soul. Before you judge me too harshly, hit that like button if you think you might have reacted the same way, because what I said next wasn't pretty. I told him he was being selfish, that he was throwing away everything we'd worked for, that whatever he was feeling was just stress and he needed therapy, not a personality transplant. We fought until sunrise, and with each word, I could see him retreating further from me, like I was speaking a language he no longer understood. 2 weeks later, Marcus came home with a stack of papers. He'd already done it, already made his decision without really consulting me. He'd purchased a cattle ranch outside of Billings, Montana, 800 acres of land he'd never seen in person, just photographs on some rural property website. He'd resigned from his firm, cashed in his stock options, and planned to leave within the month. "I want you to come with me," he said, and I could hear the pleading in his voice. "Rebecca, we can start over. We can remember who we were before all of this." But who was I before all of this? I met Marcus when I was 26, already living in New York, already building my career. I wasn't some small-town girl dreaming of escape, I was the escape. The idea of moving to Montana, of trading my life for mud and cows and endless empty sky, felt like a punishment for crimes I didn't commit. I told him no. I told him if he left, he was leaving alone, and that would be the end of our marriage. Marcus looked at me with such profound sadness that for a moment, I almost took it back. "Almost. I love you," he said quietly. "But I love myself too, and I've spent too many years forgetting that. I'm going, Rebecca. The question is whether you love me enough to take this leap with me, or whether you love this life more than you love us." That was the moment everything changed. Because suddenly this wasn't just about Marcus having a crisis, it was about me having to choose between my entire identity and a man who felt like a stranger. He left on April 15th. I'll never forget watching him load his car with the few belongings he was taking, seeing him in jeans and a flannel shirt instead of his usual Tom Ford suit. He looked younger somehow, terrified but exhilarated, like a prisoner tasting freedom for the first time. I didn't cry when he drove away. I was too angry to cry. For 3 months, I threw myself into work. I took on new clients, renovated my office, went on dates with men my friends set me up with, successful men, sophisticated men, men who understood the value of a wine list and real estate portfolio. But every single one of them bored me to tears. And every night, alone in our massive apartment that suddenly felt like a mausoleum, I'd find myself looking at Marcus's Instagram posts. Because yes, he'd started an Instagram account, something he'd never had before. And what I saw there made my blood boil and my heart ache in equal measure. He looked happy. Genuinely, radiantly happy in a way I hadn't seen in years. There were photos of him on horseback at sunrise, covered in dust and grinning like an idiot. Videos of him mending fences, learning to rope cattle, sitting around a fire with other ranch hands. He'd hired locals to help him learn the business, and in every picture, he looked more alive, more present, more himself. And then came the post that changed everything. It was a photo of Marcus at some local bar, laughing with a group of people. And next to him, with her hand casually resting on his shoulder, was a woman. She was beautiful in that natural, effortless way, long brown hair, sun-kissed skin, wearing a simple tank top and jeans. Her name was Sarah, and she was a veterinarian who worked with local ranchers. The caption said, "Grateful for good friends and new beginnings." Friends. But the way she was looking at him in that photo, the familiarity in her touch, didn't feel like friendship to me. I spent 3 days obsessing over that photo, going through every comment, every like, looking for evidence of what I was terrified to confirm. My best friend Diane told me I was being paranoid, that I'd pushed Marcus away, and now I was jealous that he'd actually found happiness without me. But a wife knows. Even an estranged wife knows. So I did something completely unhinged. I bought a plane ticket to Montana. I didn't tell Marcus I was coming. I rented a car at the airport in Billings and drove 2 hours to the address I'd found through the property records. His ranch was breathtaking in a way that made me understand, just a little, what had called to him. Rolling hills stretched endlessly under a sky so big and blue it didn't look real. I found him in the barn, and when he saw me standing there in my designer dress and heels covered in dust, he looked like he'd seen a ghost. "Rebecca," he breathed, and the way he said my name carried so much history, so much pain and love and confusion that I almost broke down right there. We talked for hours in his small, modest ranch house that was nothing like our penthouse but somehow felt more like a home. He told me everything, how the ranch was harder than he'd imagined but more rewarding, how he woke up every day with purpose, how he'd remembered what it felt like to be tired from honest work instead of soul-crushing stress. And yes, he told me about Sarah. "She's been helping me," Marcus explained, and I could see him choosing his words carefully. "Teaching me about livestock health, introducing me to the community. She's a good friend, Rebecca, and I won't apologize for having friends. You made your choice to stay in New York. I'm building a life here." The way he said it, so defensive, so protective, told me everything I needed to know. Maybe they weren't sleeping together yet, maybe it was still innocent, but there were feelings there. On both sides. I could feel the threat of her hovering between us like a ghost. That's when I made my own confession. "I've been miserable without you," I told him, the words tumbling out before I could stop them. "I thought I wanted the life we had, but Marcus, that apartment feels empty. My work feels meaningless. Everything feels meaningless without you. I was wrong. I was so wrong to let you leave alone." I watched his face as he processed this, saw the war happening behind his eyes. Hope and hurt and anger and love all tangled together. "You can't just show up here and expect everything to go back to normal," Marcus said, but his voice was shaking. "Do you have any idea how much it destroyed me when you chose your career over our marriage? When you looked at me like I was crazy for wanting something different? I've spent 3 months learning to be happy without you, Rebecca. I've started to heal. And now you're here, and I don't know if I can trust that this is real or if you'll just change your mind again when things get hard." He was right to doubt me. I'd given him every reason to. But sitting there in his modest kitchen, seeing the man I married finally looking like himself again, I knew with absolute certainty that I'd made the worst mistake of my life when I let him go. Let me stay, I begged. Just for a week. Let me see this life you've built. If after a week you still want me to leave, I'll go and I won't fight you on the divorce. But Marcus, please. Give us one more chance. What happened next was the most emotionally intense week of my entire life. Marcus agreed to let me stay in the guest room, and I threw myself into ranch life with a determination that surprised both of us. I woke up at dawn, learned to feed chickens, helped mend fences, got thrown from a horse and got right back on. I met his neighbors, including Sarah, who was exactly as beautiful and kind and perfect as I'd feared. The way she looked at Marcus made me want to scream and fight, but I forced myself to be gracious because what right did I have to be jealous? I'd abandoned him first. But here's where the story gets complicated. Because as the week went on, I could feel Marcus softening toward me. We'd talk late into the night about everything we'd never said during our marriage, our fears, our disappointments, our dreams. He told me about the moment he realized he was having a breakdown, sitting in a board meeting discussing quarterly profits while having a panic attack so severe he thought he was dying. I told him about the loneliness I'd felt for years but never acknowledged, always telling myself that success was supposed to feel empty. We were finally being honest with each other, maybe for the first time ever. On the fifth night, Sarah came over for dinner. She'd brought a pie she'd baked, and we all sat around Marcus's table making awkward small talk. I could feel the tension suffocating us, and finally, Sarah set down her fork and looked at me directly. Marcus talks about you constantly, she said, and there was no hostility in her voice, just sadness. He's never stopped loving you, Rebecca. I think you should know that. But I also think you should know that he deserves someone who will choose him, completely and without hesitation. So whatever you're doing here, whatever decision you're making, make sure it's for the right reasons. Because he's been hurt enough. The directness of it shocked me, but it also made me respect her. She wasn't playing games or pretending. She was a woman who cared about Marcus and wanted him to be happy, even if that happiness wasn't with her. After she left, Marcus and I had the fight that had been building all week. I accused him of having an affair, he accused me of being controlling and jealous. We threw everything at each other, every resentment, every wound, every truth we'd been too scared to speak. And then, exhausted and raw, we finally got to the heart of it. I can't be the man you married anymore, Marcus said, and he was crying now, both of us were. That person doesn't exist. He was a shell, Rebecca, going through the motions of a life that was killing him. This is who I really am. And if you stay, you have to love this version of me, not the fantasy of who I used to be. You have to actually want this life, not just tolerate it to keep me. And what about Sarah? I asked, because I had to know. Do you have feelings for her? Marcus was quiet for a long time, and in that silence, I felt my heart breaking all over again. I don't know, he finally admitted. Maybe. She's been there for me in ways you weren't. But Rebecca, I married you. I made vows to you. And if you're really here, if you really want to build this life with me, then Sarah is just a friend. But I need you to be sure, because I can't survive losing you twice. That night, we didn't sleep together. We just held each other on his worn couch, two broken people trying to figure out if we could put the pieces back together into something new. And in the morning, I made my decision. I called my business partner and told her I was transferring my clients to her. I called my real estate agent and told her to list our apartment. I called my mother and told her I was moving to Montana, and she predictably told me I was insane. And then I told Marcus, I'm staying. Not for a week, not as a trial. I'm staying because I choose you. I choose us. And I choose the life we can build here together, whatever that looks like. The relief and joy on his face was everything I needed to know I'd made the right choice. But here's the thing about real life, it's not a fairy tale. Choosing to stay was just the beginning of the real work. Over the following months, I had to completely reinvent myself. I had to learn skills I'd never imagined needing, had to build relationships with people who were nothing like my Manhattan friends, had to confront my own prejudices and limitations. There were days I wanted to quit, days I cried from exhaustion and frustration, days I wondered if I'd made a terrible mistake. And Sarah? She's still around. She's still Marcus's friend and his veterinarian and someone he trusts. I had to learn to live with that, to trust Marcus even when my insecurities screamed at me. We had to have hard conversations about boundaries, about his past few months without me, about what fidelity means when you've been separated. It wasn't easy. It's still not easy. But we're doing it together, and that makes all the difference. I'm writing this from the porch of our ranch house, watching the sunset paint the Montana sky in colors that don't exist in New York. Marcus is out checking on the cattle, and in a few minutes, we'll have dinner together, something simple that I learned to cook from a neighbor. Our life here is nothing like I imagined. It's harder and simpler and messier and more beautiful all at once. I miss parts of my old life sometimes, the convenience, the culture, the stimulation. But I don't miss the emptiness. I don't miss the loneliness of living with someone while feeling completely alone. Here's what I want you to understand: Marcus didn't change who he was. He just finally had the courage to become himself. And I had to decide if I loved him enough to change too, to let go of the life I'd built my identity around and risk everything for something real. Was it worth it? Most days, yes. Some days, I'm still figuring that out. But we're figuring it out together, and that's what matters. Marriage isn't about finding someone who fits perfectly into your life. It's about being willing to build a new life together, even when that means dismantling everything you thought you knew about yourself. So now I want to hear from you. If you were in my position, would you have followed your husband to Montana? Or would you have let him go and kept the life you'd built? Do you think I made the right choice? Or do you think I should have respected his decision and moved on? And what about Sarah? Do you think there's more to that story than Marcus is telling me, or am I just being paranoid? Drop your honest thoughts in the comments below because I genuinely want to know what you think. Have you ever had to choose between the life you built and the person you love? How did that turn out for you? If this story resonated with you, please hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications because I'll be sharing more about this journey, the good, the bad, and the complicated. Life on this ranch has taught me that nothing worth having comes easy, and I want to bring you all along as we navigate what comes next. Because trust me, this story is far from over. There are still so many questions left unanswered, so many challenges we haven't faced yet. Will I really be able to make this life work, or will I eventually resent Marcus for pulling me away from everything I knew? Can a marriage survive being completely rebuilt from the ground up? And what happens the next time Sarah shows up at our door? I guess we'll all find out together. Thanks for being here, for listening, and for being part of this community. Your support means everything, especially on the days when I question every choice I've made. So leave those comments, hit that like button if this story moved you, and I'll see you in the next one. Until then, I'm just a city girl learning to live like a cowgirl, one day at a time, trying to figure out if love really is enough to bridge the gap between two completely different worlds. What do you think? I really want to know. Leave your opinions in the comments.